All right, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Interview. I'm Arlian.
I'm Sean, and we are joined today by the writer for the story of Immortal Planet. Go ahead and introduce yourself if you'd like.
Hey there, I'm Joseph. Most people know me by Shard, or as it's misspelled on here, MFK Shard, MKF Shard. It doesn't matter.
Whoops.
Just Shard or Joseph, however you want to say it.
Okay, so we'll start this out how we pretty much always start out our interviews, and that is what is it that got you into game development and creation, and how long have you been involved in the field?
Um, I think the first thing, my life has been full of games. My first game was Mario RPG way back when.
Oh, wait,
Um,
really? Awesome.
yeah,
It's a good one to start with.
yeah, and my username in this case, MKF Shard, is actually sort of a lingering thing of my first major interest in game development. There was this fan game way back when called Mushroom Kingdom Fusion, which was like Mario but a huge crossover with all these different things, and it was actually pretty clever, if way too ambitious for its own good. It eventually collapsed, but I met a lot of nice people there, and it really kickstarted my interest in game design. Even if, given my family's obsession with Max, I couldn't really get into it quite yet.
Oh,
Um,
I mean, that Mac life. Fair enough.
Yeah, I ended up the first Windows PC I was able to get. I had to buy with my own money, so it took a long time before I could even start learning how to do anything um, that I was actually good at, I guess. I'm semi decent at programming, better at writing, but I still want to, program.
Okay.
Sorry if I
And
was a bit long winded.
no, that's fine.
Oh, no
So,
problem. We
exactly how long have you been in the field then?
Um, by field, do you mean professionally or just like?
yeah. Like, is this your first game that you worked on, or have you worked on other games prior to this?
This is the first game I've worked on that has been released.
Oh,
Like
okay, okay.
actually on Steam. Any other thing I've worked on has been purely either part of a small game jam or just for practice purposes.
Okay, but
Okay.
like including those, like how many years of experience would you say you were sort of like bringing into this?
Um, well, in terms of programming, none, because I wasn't involved at all in programming. In terms of writing, I guess if you count um, like all the years I've been writing random stories, I'm gonna be generous and say 10 years.
Okay.
Okay. So, as we've gone over a bit, you're the writer for this game. When were you brought on board for this project?
Um, Actually, let me reference that really quick. I can give you the exact date.
No problem.
All right.
And before the timeline he's looking for is when like a movie came out.
Um. Okay. So it was actually um on my birthday in 2016, October 18th, where I was first. Well, basically how it happened. It was kind of a chain of events that led me being on Immortal Planet. Um, First, I did this whole hobby thing where I wrote a 190-page design document for a hypothetical Dark Souls sequel um, called Mortal Souls. I ended up making a subreddit for that. People liked it. Eventually, ended up making a whole Souls-like subreddit because I was getting really interested in, just permutations on Souls. And Tomas ended up posting some of the early gameplay of Immortal Planet there, and I was like, hey, this looks really cool. I'd love to try that out. So he sent me a build over the email. I gave him my feedback. I showed him Mortal Souls, offered my skills in writing, and he brought me aboard. And the rest is history.
So had the game been already kind of in development prior to this, or was this kind of the catalyst that triggered the game's development?
Oh no, it's been in development for a while. The earliest thing I can find on the internet for it is a post on the TIG source forums from back in February 2016. So the game was already well into development by that time.
Okay.
I mean, most of the areas weren't complete yet, but you know.
Okay. So you did the writing in this. Did your specific role on this project evolve over time?
Um, I guess it did. Or at first, I was just, write the descriptions and the dialogue, and sort of provide a cohesiveness to the story. Like when I was brought on board, the basic concept of the story was already there. Like he already knew what he wanted the game to be. I was just there to be. I was there to flesh it out, zoom in on certain aspects, make sure it all made sense, and
kind of craft the lore of the world.
essentially. And I'm actually, as far as I know, I'm the only native English speaker on the team, so that was part of it.
Okay.
But yeah, oh, sorry.
No problem.
He also, of course, over the course of it, I also helped, test the game, give feedback. I did the voice in one of the trailers.
Yeah, I saw that. It's on
Yeah,
your curation page on Steam.
Oh, is it?
Well, I mean, there was that wonderful, blissfully humble thing about, and I even do the voice in the trailer.
Hey. Yep. I guess you mentioning that does remind me of something else I wanted to comment on. Basically, the game has a problem with marketing, I think. I kind of wanted to promote it as much as I could, but it doesn't really come easily. So I was like, hey, look at this in a few places. I didn't want to spam everywhere.
Right. That seems to be a common issue for the indie environment with gamings is marketing's kind of something people go to school to learn how to do. So it's not something that like people just know how to do. So that seems to be a pretty common challenge.
Yeah, I think I was like a little bit successful, like semi-successful. I never wanted to make like a platform for it that wasn't also beneficial in another way. Like I wasn't just gonna make an Immortal Planet Discord channel or anything. So I made a Souls-like Discord channel that was open to all of them because I really liked supporting just the entire idea of it. And I mean, obviously I was hoping people would join and get interested, but at the same time I didn't want it to just be limited to that and still have value after Immortal Planet was finished. Same with the Steam group.
Right.
Which is really understandable. And then, so another thing I was actually going to mention here for role, since I'm familiar with it, since I QA'd for this game, was that you were a very central contact in people's experience as beta testers. Like, were you effectively, like, I wouldn't quite, well, I guess you would have been sort of in charge of, like, feedback from a lot of the beta testers, correct?
Well, I put together the feedback form that you filled out after the beta test. Other than that, though, most of the feedback went straight to Tomas for his consideration in the game. That led to a few changes, like the addition of blood viscosity, and stuff like that.
Oh man, I remembered all the uproar initially over that, but I was pretty okay with it at the end of the day.
Yeah, personally, the system it replaced power levels. From the very moment of its conception in the game, I was completely against it.
It would have made the game too easy.
Not just too easy, but the thing is that it was intended as sort of, I don't want to say a band-aid, but it was like a way to linearly increase damage over the course of the game, which in my eyes sort of made it a mandatory thing. Blood viscosity is, I mean, it's still highly advised, but it's less mandatory than power levels would have been, I think.
Which,
because otherwise,
I can see.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't see the game at that point when it had the power levels, but I can see what you're talking about, and like,
It would get
yeah,
ridiculous. The power
having
levels.
something that increases damage does it obligates itself to the function of mandatory.
Okay,
Right.
I'm also actually going to do the math for you right quickly there, Sean. So in normal mode, you could get 4 of them. In nightmare mode, you would have been able to, in theory, get 8, I guess. And
Or 9 if you include the Mortal Blood relic.
would the Mortal Blood have given power level?
Well, I mean,
Hypothetically, but I don't think it did
No.
at first.
Yeah.
So each one of the power levels gave you an extra 20% physical damage and 10% magic damage, which would have turned.
Oh, that's
the...
gross.
Yeah, no, it would turn the game into like a complete cakewalk. Increasing the amount of
Okay.
healing items you have, how effective they are, and how long it takes for your red health to drain out is a really helpful aspect, and I still view it as sort of mandatory because it's like reinforcing your Estus Flask and your Bonfire in Dark Souls rolled into one. But
you could decide to, go for the challenge mode of
it's also
not
not as
taking
game
this
breaking.
thing.
It's not going to make the game go faster and just crush under your heel. It's increasing your sustainability, not your ability to quickly mow down all opposition in like 50 milliseconds flat, which is what power levels did.
right.
You saw what I did to the
So,
last boss
something else,
without power
about
levels.
Oh, poor Outcast. He's such a wimp.
Hey, he's pretty cool in nightmare mode.
Yeah. He's honestly my favorite character. I was really sad when I saw how people would just tear through him, and though it is kind of scummy, I do love how he can heal himself, just like the player can.
Does he actually
I
have
think
a limit
that's-
to how much he can heal himself?
He does not actually.
That is so
I
think that- I
scummy.
don't think he uses.
I think that adds an interesting
think-
challenge to it, though.
I mean, it does
Yeah,
actually.
You have to have a. You have to be relentless, just like he is.
It does make me feel a lot better
but,
about cheesing him whenever he went into his heal animations, because I used like blood drain on him whenever he started to try to heal.
That's how you-
So,
I don't think he uses Immortal Blood in his invasions, though, but he still does have Psychic Surge, which I do like. If he only had Psychic Surge, I'd still be happy with it, because that's sort of like a deterrent to, rapid DPS on him, because he can just recover his red health if he gets too low.
Which he won't actually do if you don't relentlessly hit him. If you hit him and back off, he doesn't do it, I noticed. Which is
Right, and
pretty
he also
awesome.
does it when he's low on stamina.
Yeah.
But yeah,
like-
sorry, Sean, you were going to say something.
Yeah.
no problem. So just kind of jumping back to your involvement in the game, like what is your creative process for writing, and then what was your creative process for writing a video game story? And I was also going to ask, what came first, but you already answered that. The game concept was already in existence.
Yeah. The creative process. Oh man, that's a complicated question. I don't even know how to begin. I guess I can talk about Immortal Planet specifically, because one word that can describe how Immortal Planet's story went down, all the concepts in it, is compromise. Because whenever I wanted to introduce something new, be it a name or a character or anything like that, I would go to Tomas and we would work out something together. Like, I would suggest something, he would say, no, that's too dramatic, tone it down a little. He was sort of my grounding source in there to keep the tone of the game a bit more serious and less melodramatic than I probably would have made it by myself. At the same time, though, I feel like he should have taken my advice a little bit more on certain subjects, like, oh, Wake Walker. Oh my goodness. I'm never gonna get over that.
I mean, I didn't mind it as much because they already have weird naming quirks, and I think it's been pretty firmly established they're all Looney Tunes.
So you didn't really care for the naming convention?
it was enough of an issue between us that do you remember in the credits where it said under my name, "Awake Walker is not a word"?
Yeah, I do remember that.
Tomas suggested that for me, and he was the one who came up with Awake Walker.
That's amazing.
I love it.
Okay.
So, there it is. But something else about creative process. Let's see. Oh yeah. The thing about Immortal Planet. It's a restricted setting. Like there's not. The Immortals are set in one city. The rest of the planet is completely barren, all like that. So you couldn't really do the Dark Souls thing where you have certain tidbits that focus on like other kingdoms and stuff.
Right.
The different tombs sort of serve that purpose, but at the same time, that's still not enough. So what I tried to do is, like I mentioned earlier, zoom in on certain aspects of the story. Like these people are immortal. How do they live? How do they cope with it? What do they do in their spare time? What myths do they have? What would they find important and try to strive towards? Which is
Like the stat descriptions.
Exactly that. The stat descriptions are my favorite things in the game, I think, and yet probably a lot of people aren't going to see them because they never think to like scroll all the way over.
I never thought to see it until you mentioned it, and then I was like, oh, this is so neat.
Yeah. There are certain things in there, as well as in the descriptions of the new weapons that are coming in, Wing Razor, Gunblade, and Cryo Saber, that are. I have a little subplot in mind that I'm not sure if it's going to go anywhere, but it should be interesting. But yeah, basically, if you can't expand, you have to contract.
Right.
Yeah, because it was like a very condensed game setting, which on a certain sense was nice because you didn't have like endless filler of running back and forth between hallways to get to.
Yeah. A bite-sized game there's nothing wrong with a bite-sized game.
Yeah.
Like, with less characters, I think you care about the characters that exist a little bit more.
That makes sense.
But all right, so I'm gonna actually tackle onto this because it's sort of interlinked. But so, what were the sort of challenges that like you were sort of faced as like the writer, other than Awake Walker?
I guess part of it was like letting go of certain things. Like, obviously there's all sorts of stuff I can propose, but not all of it's gonna get in. Big chunks of the game were cut out simply because they weren't feasible. And the final boss especially is someone who's gone over a lot. Like he was finalized as a character very, very late into development. Initially, in the very first story concept, he was called the First Sleepless. Then there were some iterations where he was called Last Resistance or Cocytus. And we were really struggling with like where to place him and how it didn't feel sudden, especially since he was going to be like the final boss as soon as you drop down there. And I can't remember whether it was Tomas or I that suggested like meeting him in the tombs. Like one of the ideas was that he would sort of be just out of your reach, walking through the tomb, and it's like, wait, who's that guy? And you can kind of see shades of that where you meet him at the beginning of the Fortress in the Archives. And in order to sort of connect him with the early ideas, I gave him the NPC name of Sleepless Outcast, which immediately stuck, and gave him some of the more interesting dialogue in the game, if I say so myself.
Yeah, I got a really neat vibe off talking to him, especially before Nightmare Mode, because you got this almost, is he a friend or foe type thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
A fun fact is that some of his dialogue was actually taken from the Prophet. At first, the priest and the prophet, the rebel twins, after you beat them, you would have a chance to talk with their like psychic ghost, who would threaten you before facing them again later. The prophet would prove to be a good guy who was basically just under the thrall of his brother. Like he didn't have enough willpower to really break out of his brother's like just the priest is the big asshole here.
Which you
And
sort of get
the
from
prophet
reading
would
their
like banish his
description.
brother.
Yeah, kind
Yeah.
of picked up on that a little bit.
Yeah, if there's a villain in the game, it's him. But yeah, the prophet was going to talk to you and tell you about the vessel beneath the city, and that would be your cue to go down there. At one point, originally we were going to have the game like non-linear, and then we were going to have it linear again, just so things work. But then eventually we realized that it was fine. The big thing was that the prison was supposed to be the last area at first, but then as he was making the fortress, he realized that he made the fortress a lot harder, at least in his own eyes. So that became the quote-unquote last area in a non-linear game.
Which was hilarious
Excuse me.
because I found the prison boss harder, but the fortress boss, fortress boss has more damage and health, but his attack pattern is a lot easier to deal with.
That said, you found the prison boss harder, but the prison itself
It's
easier.
a cakewalk. Yeah, it's a huge cakewalk
Yeah.
compared to all the enemies in there. It has nice design for the prison.
Yeah,
just the
I
enemies are-
honestly, think the enemies in the fortress are like really well designed. Like the sorcerers in particular are my favorite enemies.
They're bastards. All the sorcerers in this game are dicks because they're just like, oh hey, you know what to teleport is? And I'm like, what? And then they teleport in my face and stab me, and I'm like, oh, I just feel bad. But
Yeah.
So on that note, of story, looking back, is there anything about the story that you wish you could have changed or done differently?
You know, the story as it is, I'm relatively satisfied with it. If I were to change nothing about the actual content in the game and just the story, I can't really think of something I'd fix. I mean, if I could add stuff, hell, I'd add so much. But don't have infinite time and money. I don't know. What I really wanted to do at some point is sort of expand the cemetery area of the game, the big hub, so that it's not just a series of hallways. Maybe a few alternate paths that could one day lead to extra dungeons if we were successful enough to do that, which we might not be. But yeah, as far as the story goes, I don't think I change a thing except maybe fixing some descriptions that were a little short or kind of pointless.
Okay.
Like the throwing knife. Throwing knife is weird.
I was like, does this do something? Because it's just like, it feels really good when you throw it away, and I was like, ran around a dungeon killing everything with only the throwing knife.
It just
Hey, go for
feels
it.
good to throw it.
Yeah.
Okay, so the other thing we're gonna ask then that's also pertinent to this is, so there's been a little bit of news so far in the pipeline that there is a bit more content underway in the form of new weapons. So could you maybe clarify on this upcoming feature and also any other features that are sort of potentially planned for adding into the game?
Well, something interesting about the new weapons is that they're sort of non-traditional weapons as far as the weapons in the game are. Rather than waking and sleeping like the other ones do, they don't really have a traditional wake up or second form, but they change in different ways. Like the gun blade, you can load it and fire it, and it's a bit stronger than the normal gun, and that's like a shotgun spread.
Oh, does it scale
Okay.
in the same way too?
I hope it does. Honestly, On the gameplay side, Tomas tells me next to nothing about the details.
Fair enough. I was just sort of
All I
curious
know
if
is
it's
that I
scaled
gotta make
similar.
descriptions.
Okay.
Yep. And the Wing Razor is gonna be fun. Concept-wise, it's my favorite of the new weapons because you throw it, and then you can summon it back to you. But in the meantime, you punch.
So it's that whole
Interesting.
thing of you get to toss your weapon away and then pull out some sweet martial arts combos. Except less
Basically.
martial arts and more just probably heavy
Interesting.
punching people in the face.
So kind of going for mechanically different than the other weapons.
Yeah, I think that's the idea.
So there was
No, I
three
mean-
weapons mentioned, by the way.
Cryo Blade. Cryo Blade, basically, you just do a big ice slash. I'm not sure if it's gonna be any more complicated than that, or if it's gonna have a cooldown. I hope it has a cooldown, otherwise that'd be silly.
Like Fireblade
yeah.
silly?
Yes.
Wow, because
Um,
that's pretty silly.
But yeah, I believe there's more planned for that particular content update, but I think I've said too much already.
Yeah, because I believe it's also mentioned that there's going to be 3 new fights with that too, because you're taking these weapons from their owners.
Right, the wielders. I'm not going to say how exactly you encounter the wielders, but I think it should be fun.
Actually, quick question there. Is there going to be any sort of difference between these fights for the Nightmare mode and the normal mode?
As far as I know, there's going to be one of these fights in each of them, like, non-temple tunes. Besides the normal Nightmare mode increase in difficulty, well, difficulty in this case meaning, power and the
Health.
slightly different layouts, yeah. I don't think there's really going to be any difference between the fights. I have suggested, though this is probably not going to happen, that like maybe bosses or enemies could get new moves in Nightmare mode, but that's probably way too much.
That would be a pretty big undertaking, I imagine.
I was sort
Yeah.
of hoping for it because out of the bosses, the biggest change between the boss fights was like the second archive fight, because the boss starts playing that range game with you across the room, and that's really fun.
I love that.
I just walked into that room the first time and like panicked when it was like, "Oh, you have a railgun. What is this?" And then
I kind of consider that his fight sort of an improvement on, in Dark Souls 2, the Dragon Slayer, where you could make the arena bigger.
Yes.
Yeah, it's has that sort of soul in it.
okay, that's actually pretty neat. And then I
Something-
really liked the final Prophet fight, because that actually was
Yeah.
like the most different fight out of all the bosses for their second phase.
Then I was like, kill the one guy first.
And then, oh yeah, there's this. Were you the one who knocked him off a ledge, or was that some other person who was playing the game?
I think
Yeah,
it might have
in
been
one of the-
someone else.
In one of the earlier builds, you could knock the Prophet off the ledge, killing him instantly. It was hilarious.
Oh.
But it's interesting you should mention that fight in particular, because you know how I was talking about Mortal Souls earlier? That's
Yeah.
my hyper-ambitious design document. And interestingly enough, besides the whole similarity of, Immortal Planet, Mortal Souls, there was a certain boss I had planned in there called the Bisected Emperor. And what he was is he was two brothers cut in half but sewn together. And
Interesting.
one was based around physical combat, the other was based around magical. And they could split apart during the battle, sort of walking independently on their own as if they had an invisible second half. And then they could come back together, and they would have different attack patterns in both of the forms. So that wasn't inspiration for the fight, but it was just an interesting coincidence.
Fair enough. Any other actual hints for potential thing? Like, I know a couple people have been like, "How do we get the last boss's weapon?"
Yeah, the Glyve Hammer is in the game. It's in the code, but it's currently unobtainable by any means. which is
Oh.
a pity. I have suggested ways for it to be gotten. The way I suggested, though this will likely not come to pass, is how in Nightmare Mode you see the outcast on the other side of the laser gate, and then you go all the way around to the other side, he's gone, but there's nothing there, and it's sort of a disappointment.
Have the glaive
I was-
hammer just sit in there.
Yeah, I was thinking of having that sitting there, but in the room prior to that, there'd be like enemies from the fortress sitting there, guarding it. So
that's mean.
usually that room is kind of pointless to go to unless you want to get the ceremonial pistol.
Oh.
So there would just be, late game enemies in that room preventing you from getting the powerful weapon.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's just a suggestion though, unlikely to happen. But you can always dream. Fun story, I once asked Tomas for the source code of the game, and he gave it to me, but without any of the other assets, just the code. So I couldn't actually compile it or do anything with it, I could just look at the code. It was certainly an eye-opening experience. There was a lot of it, but it was a lot simpler than I expected. I assume the complexities come from where I couldn't see, like the actual game itself. Yep.
Okay, so beyond Immortal Planet, are there any other projects you're working on, or anything you're going to be working on soon?
Right now, excuse me. Right now, my big priority is trying to essentially get to a point with a certain engine that the next game I'm involved in is one I'm directly programming on. Because it was fun working with Tomas, but there's always that disconnect when you can't directly work on the game files. I just had to make the text documents and stuff and send it to him so he could put it in the game. And I felt a bit out of control sometimes. So a game in which I could do the writing and the programming would be great for me. Currently looking into Unity and Godot, a small engine that's open source, as well as Game Maker, though working with Unity has shown me the limitations of Game Maker. But honestly, in order to even make a finished thing, I'd still need to find a team to put together, because I can't do art or music, animation, stuff like that.
Right.
Mostly at this point, I'm just working on getting used to coding larger scale stuff, and just trying to rein in my scope a little bit, because I have problems with going over ambitious with ideas. But at the same time, if I go too small, then I lose interest.
Right.
It's difficult. I keep getting distracted.
No
and I
problem.
need to find ways to keep productive. Currently have a bunch of Unity and Unreal books on my iPad that I've been trying to skim through to mentally prepare myself. But yeah, I can't really say that there's any one project I'm working on right now, though Tomas has talked about stuff we could work on together in the future, potential ideas. He's been talking about, just various concepts. I've been throwing ideas back and forth. It's probably going to be smaller in scope than Immortal Planet, at least in terms of visual aspects of it. For thinking of like doing a lot with a little, as opposed to how Immortal Planet was sort of a little with a lot. There's a lot of ways we could go with that, but for now things are very much up in the air. I can give you names of like game ideas I have that I've given early on in the past, and if you want, I can sort of elaborate on them just in the early stages that they are.
Yeah, by all means, if you would like to do that.
It's always interesting
Sure.
to hear like the sort of things that we could potentially have to look forward from you.
Yeah. I mean, I'm still interested in making a Souls-like of my own one day. I mean, more so than Immortal Planet is. I mean, I'm as much a fan of Immortal Planet as I am a part of the development team. But yeah, the names of games that currently I'm most focused on making one day. There's Deadbeat, Rogue Thought, Vow of the Pretenders, and Tower of Minos.
And those suddenly make a lot more sense once you've actually put them in context.
Yeah. As you can
Like
probably tell,
Deadbeat, I'm imagining some sort of zombie rhythm game.
not too far off. The idea for that one was the basic. It was actually kind of funny. I got the idea from a dream. Same with Rogue Thought, but in the dream it was sort of it was Bloodborne 2, and the whole thing was that the main character put on these cursed headphones that let him perceive the land of the dead. But if he ever tried to take them off, it would take a part of his brain with him, and he had to fulfill a contract before he was allowed to escape the land of the dead.
So it's Bloodborne meets Tomb of the Necrodancer?
Actually, gameplay-wise, I wasn't actually thinking it was going to be Souls-ish at all.
Oh. I just picked Tomb of the Necrodancer because hard game, rhythm-oriented.
Yeah, I wasn't actually thinking of it being rhythm-oriented either. I was sort of, you know, The World Ends With You?
Yes,
oh my
yes.
god, yes.
Very
Yeah.
fun game.
I was envisioning Deadbeat as sort of a mix between The World Ends With You, Transistor, Final Fantasy X, and I don't know how else to describe it, but the basic gameplay conceit I had with it was essentially you have the main character and two partners, and you have each of them has a time bar, same with the enemies, and you also have this team time bar. You can do actions like reactive actions like dodging enemy attacks and moving around during the battle by like either just basically each face button would correspond to like move, dodge, use item, attack, but you can only attack when your bar is full, and everything else takes up bar also. But whenever you try to attack without having a full bar, it takes a portion of the team bar to complete your gauge. So it's sort of resource management, and you can hold the trigger buttons to do the same thing for your partners. So you can sort of position yourselves almost Chrono Trigger style to like do team attacks that hit a wider area. And yeah, I was sort of imagining like weird time bar systems would be the main thing of it.
Fair enough.
Interesting.
I like Transistor, so the idea of like if it had any sort of the ability creation system that Transistor had, I would have been quite intrigued. Such cheese you could do in that game.
Yeah. Yeah, but as I said, it's still very early on. It just, I haven't programmed anything for it yet. Just have a concept
Fair
along
enough.
with the other ones.
Well, hey, the concept's a start.
Yeah. And as for like non-game aspirations, I'm, as probably a lot of other people are, writing a novel that'll that'll be finished one day. Trademark. One of these days. So hopefully that can be something. But yeah. Yeah.
Fair enough. So, in this case, we can just sort of totally cut out that very long pause I had there.
Sorry.
No, that was all me, baby. If there's nothing else to really address with the interview, I suppose, first off, thank you kindly for your time. It's actually appreciated that you're able to come here, answer our questions, provide us a bit of insight into things upcoming, and that there might even still be stuff upcoming after the weapons update.
Yeah, there better be.
So yeah, definitely we'll keep in touch with you in regards to your future projects, and we should also have an Immortal Planet review actually coming up, sort of to accompany our overall interview here.
Yeah, that'll...
We also totally have our asset video for Immortal Planet.
Shameless end plug.
Shameless end plug. Anyways, for those of you who are also tuned in, thanks for popping in and listening, and we'll catch you next time.
See you guys later.
And like, comment, subscribe.
Yep.
So before we actually end this particular interview video, me and Arlian do have something that we would like to make known to the public.
Sort of
And-
appending this as an epilogue to this interview.
Yeah, and that is in regards to the so-called good ending for the game Immortal Planet. It has come to our attention through the combined efforts of the beta testers and various people data mining the game that the good ending doesn't actually exist.
There hasn't actually been an implementation of it. There is technically a first step that was confirmed as a first step inside the beta tester channel on Discord, and that was by like the development team itself, as that was confirmed as a first step. But beyond that, there's actually nothing. There is no step beyond that to actually achieve the good ending. There is nothing to go past that. It's just there is no good ending, which is sort of a very unpleasant twist of events, because before, like originally when the achievement for bad ending was just there, but that was the only one, we sort of assumed it was just like a meme, like there is no other ending, it's just the bad ending is the default ending, and that's it.
Yeah.
Then the dev added patch notes which said that the good ending was added, and even went so far as to drop hints about there being a good ending inside the Discord and inside the beta tester Discord.
So that's the tall and short of it. There is no good ending. It's, if you're looking for it, you're wasting your time. It's not there.
And we can even give you steps to go and confirm this.
We will talk more about this. We're going to do a coffee break where we actually talk about, our thoughts and feelings on this subject and delve a little bit more into it.
But that said, for those who want proof that there is no good ending, go into the Immortal Planet properties in the Steam folder, browse the local files, go into the English text document, and then just read all the text in the game is in the English text document when you're browsing the local files for Immortal Planet. And yeah, there's nothing. You can go through that entire thing and pick over it as much as you please. There is currently no good ending implemented.
Yeah, so as I said, through the combined efforts of beta testers, QA, and good old-fashioned data mining, we have confirmed
very unpleasant
that there it isn't there.
Which is
so
yeah. I was part of that QA team, so this sort of, I have a lot of feelings on this since it was getting directly lied to. Yes.
Yeah, we'll tackle those feelings in the coffee break. So until then, as we said earlier, like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.
And actually, for this sort of news especially, I would also really ask that some of you guys share this, especially for people that have played the game. Yes,
please absolutely share this content, or any content, honestly.
Any content, but actually especially this, even for just this last bit and for the coffee break itself, because for the sake of fairness, people should know this. Anyways, well, yeah, we'll catch you next time. The whole jazz, like, comment, subscribe. This is Arlian. I'm out.
See you guys later.